Hello and welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. My name is Kelly and I'm a former wedding planner and blogger, and I'm obsessed with weddings. If you're planning a wedding in Ireland, you're in the right place. You're going to learn the tried and tested methods to planning your dream wedding without the added stress. Think of this as your one-stop shop for everything to do with planning your wedding in Ireland, with me, your new wedding planning bestie, and a cup of tea. This is Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast. I have a really fun episode up ahead because I actually got some input from real life newlyweds. And today we're talking about the things that they regret, things that they would do differently, things that they wish they did, things they wish they didn't do, suppliers that they wish they hired. The number one thing or the number one topic that people spoke about was things to do with photos. And so I'm going to share all of these things. But firstly, you're probably thinking, where did you get these newlyweds from? Well, as part of Weddings Online, we actually have this amazing Facebook community called Help I'm Getting Married. And I can pop a link to that in the notes for this episode. But there are over 73,000 members in the group. Most of them are engaged couples. We've got some suppliers in there from across Ireland. And we've also got some newlyweds who love to offer really, really helpful advice as well. And so I knew that if I was going to post the question in this group, I would get some really, really good input. And so what I've done is I asked the following question. I said, for the newlyweds, is there anything you do differently if you could plan your wedding all over again? And so what I've done is I've taken all the common responses, I've categorized them a little bit, and I'm just going to read them out to you. I'm keeping all of these responses anonymous. And so if you are one of the newlyweds and you are listening to this episode, don't worry, I'm not sharing your name. Nobody's going to come hunting you down for sharing your sassy opinions, but I will share everything anonymously. And really, the point of this episode is for engaged couples to get some perspective from people who are on the other side, people who have just had a wedding or they've had a wedding recently and they're looking back and thinking, you know what, I stressed too much over this thing, or I didn't give this thing enough attention. And so it might help you as an engaged couple to put everything into perspective and to know where to put your focus. And so this is by no means prescriptive, but hopefully it's going to be helpful. And along the way, I may share a little bit of my perspective and some of my opinions about some of these things too. Let's get started with the first category. This is all about the dress. And this person's advice is solid. It's actually something that I have said on the podcast a few times before. And this is how it goes. When getting your dress altered, try it on sitting down. I wouldn't have actually changed it because when standing up, the fit was perfect, but I'd have liked to have known how tight it was going to feel when I sat down. So if you really think about how much time you're going to spend sitting down in your wedding dress, it is definitely important to try it on while sitting down. So if you do want to make any adjustments, you can do that. Think about your meal. You don't want to be sitting down in a dress that feels tight and uncomfortable, and then you're trying to eat, but you can't eat because you feel really squished. So make sure you try your dress on sitting down. That's some really good advice. The next category, we have quite a lot of opinions in this category, which is things to do with guests, family, the wedding party, all of that kind of thing. So one person says, invite who you want, not who others think should be there. And I think that is really good advice. When you look back on your guest list in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, when you look at your wedding photos, you want to look at the people there and think, I'm still friends with those people, or I'm still in contact with those people, within reason, obviously, if you've moved countries or if they've moved, things might be a little bit different. But for the most part, you want to look back and go, I'm happy with who I had at my wedding. Another person says, I massively regret not spending more time with my immediate family on my wedding day. We had 160 guests and I tried to spend a little time with everyone, but it was near impossible. Because of that, I barely saw my own parents. And that's quite sad, actually. If you don't think about these things, you can get to the day and you can kind of feel like the day gets away with you and you haven't spent time with the people who are closest to you, the ones who've probably made things possible for your wedding. So I'll tell you what we did. So my husband Glenn and I, when we got married, we both got ready in separate locations. So our wedding ceremony was probably a 5-minute drive from where we were each getting ready. So I was in our home, he was in his parents' home. The locations just works out really, really well. So this setup could still work for you if you're getting married in a hotel. And perhaps you've got a hotel room for you and your wedding party, and then your partner has their own hotel room for that side of the wedding party. But what we did was, so it was me and my bridesmaids, and I had both of my parents there. And then Glenn, he had his groomsmen, and he had both of his parents there. So it actually meant that on the morning of our wedding, we each got time with our families, and it was really, really special. So I had all my friends with me and my parents, and my mom actually helped me to kind of get my dress on and everything, and do the zips and buttons and all the rest of it. You know, it was a cute photo moment, but actually a really lovely time. And then we got pictures together and everything. So I'd recommend taking this person's advice and actually thinking ahead of time. If you want to spend quality time with your parents on your wedding day, you're going to have to factor it in. So speaking of time with people, somebody says, I'd have liked a bit of time to actually chat with guests instead of only managing to get a quick hello in. And again, if you don't think about it, it's going to creep up on you, and you're going to get to the end of the day and be like, oh my gosh, I did not speak to anyone. So I'll give you a couple of tips. One thing is, if you have the time, if you have the budget, you could extend the wedding festivities. So a lot of people like to have, something pre-wedding, like a barbecue or something really low-key the night before the wedding or the afternoon before the wedding. That's especially helpful for guests who are coming from out of town. So anybody who's traveling, it means you actually get to sit down and catch up with them without the formality of the wedding. Many people do the same thing, but on the second day, and host a day 2 wedding celebration. And that's another way that you can actually get some quality time, a bit more relaxed time with everybody. And you don't have to be at the mercy of the formalities of your day. You can actually just hang out with people. Another thing is to just be relaxed about your wedding program for the day. So there'll be moments where things actually just have to get done. And if they're not done at that time, it has a knock-on effect. So some of those key moments would be, when you have your photos taken. That tends to be during your cocktail hour, and it's placed there for a reason. It's often got to do with the time that the sun is setting, and that's for the golden hour pictures. It's usually a great transitional time for your guests to be arriving from a ceremony location to a reception location. So logistically, it actually makes sense to take a pause and just go and get pictures done. But what you might want to do is extend cocktail hours. So it's not just 60 minutes, but maybe it's 2 hours or an hour and a half. And what you could do in that time is you could have your pictures taken and then join the guests for the last part of your cocktail hour. So you actually get to sit down and chat with them. And then, of course, you can find moments during the reception. I actually saw a video that you may have seen yourself. I saw a video doing the rounds on Instagram recently where a couple, I think it was the groom, making a speech. And he basically said to all the guests, when it's time for you to go, we give you permission to do the Irish exit. And so he basically said to them, we don't expect you to each come and say goodbye to us, because in doing so, you're probably going to be interrupting us while we dance, while we chat, while we're catching up with people. Rather, take the time to come and say hello to us while you're still around, and we'll chat and catch up instead of interrupting other moments. And so I thought that was actually really clever. He did it in a very polite way, so people knew that they could just slip out when they needed to, and that they should rather prioritize catching up when they were still around as opposed to only saying goodbye when they were leaving, at the mercy of other conversations that were happening. So have a think about what you want to do, but just keep in mind, if you want to chat to your guests, you've got to factor it in. Somebody else says, my biggest regret was my choice of bridesmaids. They were useless. I picked family as I thought it would be an easier choice, but I would have picked friends instead if I could go back in time. The photographer and husband ended up helping me with my wedding dress. That's another one that's quite sad, because you expect your bridesmaids to be the people who are going to be your supporters, your cheerleaders, the people who are really practically there for you. So take this person's advice and actually just think it through before making a decision about who you should choose. It might be that you pick some family and some friends. It might be that you only have friends or you only have family. Only you will know what's going to work. But just think about it. Similarly to the advice we had earlier about don't only invite the people who you think you should invite, but invite the ones you really want there. When you're choosing people to be in your wedding party, it's the same. Don't choose people who you think you should choose. Pick the ones you really want to choose. But I also advise that you are really clear ahead of time with your expectations. So if you would like your wedding party to be really involved in different things before the day and on the day, it's kind of not their fault if you don't communicate those things. So let them know what your expectation is and give them the option to say, as much as I would love to walk down the aisle with you and support you, I can't be available for these things because I have loads of stuff going on in my own world. And then be understanding if that expectation isn't met because they've communicated. Okay, finally, in this category, somebody says, tell people as little as possible because there will always be Debbie Downers. And I like that. I don't like the Debbie Downers, but I like the idea that you keep things a secret. You don't have to keep everything a secret, but it might be that you don't tell anybody what your dress is going to look like. Maybe you give some hints about your theme and your decor, but you don't tell everybody everything, and you allow them to experience it for the first time when they get there. Because again, you don't want people's opinions. You really don't. Okay, next category. Supplier regrets. Okay, I'm going to fly through these. Somebody says, I may have gotten a content creator because there are such fab ones out there. I agree. There's some really, really amazing ones. Somebody says, I wish we had had a day of wedding coordinator to deal with all the little issues and logistics that arose on the day. And then another person says, I would have had a hair and makeup trial. Now, these are three things that I have spoken about in great detail because I fully believe that all of these suppliers are there to make your day as amazing as possible. So your content creators, videographers, those are some of the suppliers that people don't think about until it's too late. And they think, if I could relive my memories through a video, I would love to do that. And then you realize you can't. So take the advice and just think about it. I'm not telling you must hire them, just think about it. In terms of wedding coordinators, most wedding venues come with a venue coordinator. So it's just important to know that a venue coordinator is there to coordinate anything to do with your venue. So they're not going to be the ones to be following up with all your suppliers or making sure that your gifts and cards end up in the right place. Sometimes they will. There are many venue coordinators that go out of their way to do those things, but it's not actually on their list of responsibilities. So just think about it. And yes, have a hair and makeup trial. You want to make sure you know what you're going to look like. You want to feel confident and comfortable. The next category is all about stress and feeling overwhelmed. We had loads of people who said the same thing, which was this. I wouldn't have stressed so much about the small things. We hear that a lot. We actually do a real wedding feature on the blog, the Weddings Online blog, every Friday, and we often ask for the newlyweds to give their advice. And so many times they say something along the lines of not being stressed about the small things. So I know that at some points in the wedding planning journey, it can feel like everything's important. But the reality is not everything is equally important. So allow yourself to take a deep breath and let it go. If something isn't perfect, it's fine. Your guests are probably not going to notice. They'll notice if the food is terrible. They'll notice if the entertainment is really bad. But they're not going to notice if your napkins don't match the bridesmaids' dresses or if your cake is in a different location to where you thought it should go. Those kind of smaller details, they don't know. So just focus on the big things and then hire suppliers who you can trust to make everything else happen. Okay, when it comes to budget, this is actually hilarious because we had a lot of people talking about budget in two completely different sides of the scale. So one category of people said things like this: set a budget and stick to it. If you can't afford it, don't do it. Don't stress too much about the decor, the extras, etc., because barely anyone is going to notice. Then the other group of people said something like this: controversial, but we panicked too much about money and we didn't get the little extras that we would have really liked because of it. So I would be more relaxed on the budget and I wouldn't have been so uptight. So I'm sharing both sides of that because only you will know which category you fit into. If you're the type of person who's likely to be stressing about money after the wedding, then perhaps having a set budget and following it is the strategy for you. But if you're the kind of person who's going to regret not making the sacrifice somewhere else to have something at your wedding, then maybe that is the kind of person you are. So it really is just considering your own personality, your own availability, budget, everything. Sit down with your partner and work out where you fall on that scale. But just bear it in mind. Okay, we've got 2 more categories to go through. The one is logistics. So when it comes to entertainment, somebody said, if you're having a 360-degree video or photo booth, try have them in the main room. We had ours down the hall, so half the people didn't even know it was there. It was too far away, and half the people were at that and not in the room. Again, I've spoken about this before. I attended a wedding a couple of years ago, and they had different rooms for everything. So there was one room where the dancing happened, there was a photo booth in another room, a barbecue outside, and that was their strategic way of saying that they didn't mind where anybody was, and they wanted everyone to have the option to kind of be wherever they felt comfortable. So if your idea is for people to be comfortable in different spaces, then great. But if your idea is to have a packed dance floor, then you want to make sure that the other entertainment options are within eyesight. So somebody who is sitting at their table enjoying, a glass of wine, you want them to be able to sit at their table and see the dance floor. If you want people to be at the video booth or the photo booth, you want them to be there and see the dance floor. So just consider what your priorities are when it comes to entertainment, so that you know if you have people in different locations, they're not going to be aware of the other things going on in the other rooms. When it comes to bathroom baskets, somebody says flip-flops and bathroom baskets. We came home with 90% of the stuff that we filled them with, including the flip-flops. When it comes to DIY, somebody says, I wouldn't have done anything DIY. It's too stressful thinking about setting up and who will do the setup. And then trying to sell it all after. Nobody wants to buy someone's secondhand wedding DIY projects. I would have set more money aside to pay for decor setup. Again, this is somebody's personal experience. I always say DIY is one of those things that you think is going to save you time and money, but actually it can be very stressful unless you are the DIY queen. It's something that you do often, but then don't DIY everything. Pick a thing and do that, and then leave the rest to the pros. Last thing in this category is the guest book. If there are things that you want people to do or sign, such as guest books or audio guest books, selfie mirrors, all of that kind of thing, make your signs big and obvious for the guests. We only got a few written guest messages and a few audio guest book messages after spending the money to have them for guests on the day. Great advice. If you want somebody to do something, make it very clear. You could incorporate that into your MC welcome. They can let people know, or like this person has suggested, have big signs, make it very, very clear. Okay, I told you that the final category had to do with photos, and this is going to help a few people, I think. Somebody says, the only thing that I would do differently is make a list of particular photos that I wanted and give that to my maid of honor to liaise and organize with the photographer. I specifically chose my photographer because his portfolio was full of candid and humorous photos. I didn't want the formal pictures. He did a superb job, but I would have liked some formal ones looking back on it. So again, great advice. Have a think about the photos you want. Make a list and give it to your photographer, or like this person has said, she would have loved to give it to the maid of honor to then speak with the photographer. Somebody else says, I would have booked a second photographer to focus on everybody other than me. So that's the beauty of a dual photographer team, is you get somebody who focuses on you and then somebody who focuses on everybody else. And then the final one, which is, it's a really sad one actually, but it is really helpful to consider. This person says, I would have had more pictures with my parents. Maybe do a first look with your dad. My dad sadly died a few weeks after the wedding, and I wish I had done this. So again, I don't want to end on a bummer of a note, but this person highlights something really important, and that is if you want to have some special memories with the people closest to you, put that on a list. Make sure your photographer gets those pictures. You don't have to create a whole event around it, but just take a pause to have pictures with those that are closest to you. Well, thank you for listening today. The Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast is produced by me, Kelly, and mixed, mastered, and edited by Glenn Hartman. For more wedding planning tips, advice, checklists, and more, visit weddingsonline.ie.